The one that sits on the cabinet that you can just plug in and take out, whatever, that's personal property, but this will go into the cabinetry. Yeah, kind of in between. I think it leans towards a fixture. Let me give you another example. We had an interesting dilemma come up. I don't know if this surprises you or not, but hopefully it doesn't happen, but it shouldn't surprise you if it does happen. The day that a buyer and seller go under contract on a property, the day a buyer and seller go under contract, there are two extraordinarily happy people. A buyer just found his mansion on the hill. The seller just unloaded this dump. Okay? So you have two people that are excited because they have disparate goals in this transaction. Well, here's the problem. Once the buyer goes under contract, what do they start doing? After negotiations are over, the inspections was the word I was looking for. You do understand that inspections, they're going to start showing all the warts, right? So anyway, the buyer starts seeing the flaws in the house. And then they start going back to the seller. Hey, we want you to fix this and this and this. Now here's that seller sitting back there and said, I sold you the house for this amount. I'm not inclined to do this and this and this. Sometimes they get into loggerheads on this. And occasionally what happens is they look for ways to punish each other. Okay? It's not pretty. It doesn't always happen. But you're naive if you think that it'll never happen. Okay? So here's the buyer out there asking. And the seller is like, I'm going to figure out a way to get my money back out of him. Here's the way this seller determined to do it. Okay? He had been beat up on the inspection process. The seller had a 2-story foyer. And in this foyer, he had 2 sets of windows, one up, one down. They had an elaborate set of draperies that was made for those windows. It actually flowed, covered both of them. This is a pretty major piece of drapery here, okay? Now, if you read closely the fixtures paragraph, you will see that window hardware is always considered to be a fixture. You know, the curtain rods, the shades, the blinds, the stuff like that. It's always considered a fixture. The contract says so. But how about the drapery itself? Not normally. It's not normally a fixture, right? It's just material. Now how about this case? A 2-story foyer with 2-story drapes. What do you think? Were they so customized? Were they so much adapted that anybody looking at it would consider them to be a fixture? So anyway, here's what happens. The seller finally gets ticked with the buyer enough, and he said, well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to take those drapes with me. He wasn't even thinking about it to start with, but after the buyer starts pushing him a little bit, take them drapes with me. I said, seller, don't do it. Don't do it. Because I think you're wrong. I think if you take those, any court would look at this and say, they were so much adapted, customized for this purpose, they would be considered nothing but a fixture in this particular case. You know how much those drapes cost? They're in excess of $2,000. I don't know how much in excess of $2,000, but it was significant, the cost that was associated with those drapes. And like I said, the seller was just trying to get back at the buyer, and that was going to be his strategy for doing it. So we had to have a come to Jesus meeting type thing where we sit down and talk about this. Are you willing to take this risk? What are you going to do with it? You're buying your ranch. Okay, you have no use for them, absolutely. Let's let this guy have them so we don't end up with this discussion. Eventually, cooler heads prevail. We end up with close. Everybody's okay with it. All right, look at your contract. Not right now, I'm saying as you're studying. Fixtures, look at the contract, see what the contract says. But then remember, for test purposes, in the event of ambiguity, the intention, relation, method of attachment, or adaptation, IRMA, the total circumstances test. Okay? Is it important whether an item is a fixture or not? Heck yeah. Because if it's a fixture, it goes with the property. But if it's personal property, you can do what? Take it with you, seller, when you leave. Which, by the way, Jen, will you now remind us what you said a little bit earlier as we introduced this topic? The what? The refrigerator. Be careful about refrigerators. Refrigerators are not typically fixtures unless they're built in. If you read the contract, you will see it refers to built-in appliances as being fixtures. But in most cases, refrigerators, you just slide them in and out, right? So they're not. Can you imagine agents occasionally running into problems regarding refrigerators? What's that? Yeah, it is awful. It happens way too much. I actually was at a meeting one time where a broker in charge was standing in front of the class, and basically made this comment. He said, "You've not been a real estate agent long enough until you've purchased someone an appliance." And I just hit my head like this. I'm like, here I am trying to teach them not to make the mistake. And basically he said, you're going to make the mistake. You're going to end up buying somebody an appliance. And that's the way you're going to deal with it. I would prefer you not make the mistake. Now let me tell you about one of my students who did make the mistake. Okay? Because you will. If you can, it's an expensive education though. Try not to do it. I had a friend of mine who took a listing. She took a listing in a small town. And the house that she listed was a house that was built in the early 1900s. It's what I would refer to as a period house. It was not on a historic registry or anything like that, but it was a period house where all the people on the street had older houses. They all took care of them. They all looked just so, really quaint part of town, you might say, okay? So the people that were selling the house, they had been first-time home buyers when they bought the house. They are now first-time home sellers, okay? So anyway, she goes in and she's looking at the house. This house was built in the early 1900s. In the dining room was a chandelier that by this point was close to 100 years old. The chandelier was close to 100 years old. The wife of the couple, this chandelier had come from her mother's mother's mother. What was that? Come from her great-grandmother. Now listen, we're not talking about chandelier from the Biltmore house or anything like that, but if nothing else, it has, it's certainly sentimental. It may have value as an antique, certainly an heirloom. Okay? So my agent walks in, she's talking with the woman about the house in general, you're making small talk, you're checking the things out, and eventually you sit down at the table and you start talking about in-depth information. And so she asked the sellers, what do you plan on doing about that chandelier in the dining room? Because they had told her the history of it. Well, this happened right about the time that HGTV was starting to get really popular, and the word staging was kind of in the buzzword phase at that point. So, and by the way, I'll give you a little hint about HGTV. When you get in the field, watch HGTV, learn the buzzwords, and then use them when you're talking to clients, because clients will think, oh my gosh, they use that word on HGTV. That person must be a genius. They already know all this stuff. Use it against them, not against them. So anyway, she asked the couple, she says, well, what do you want to do? My recommendation as an agent is that you do what? If you're going to take it with you, you take it down before anybody ever sees this house. Take it down, go to Lowe's, find one that looks nice, replace it, fine. That's what I recommend you do. But the couple said, well, no, we've been watching these shows, and we think that it really makes the room. It really, it's a period home, right? And this is about the same age as the house. It really makes the house. So here's what we want to do. We want to leave the chandelier up, and then you just take care of it to make sure that it's addressed in the contract or whatever. You take care of all that. So that's what she does against her better judgment. And this goes back to, listen, you will give good advice in the field. I can't promise you that your client will always listen to your good advice. Okay? So anyway, they leave it up. The agent, being as paranoid as she was, she wrote in the MLS, chandelier in dining room does not convey. As you walk into the dining room, there's a note hanging from the chandelier, written in calligraphy that says, chandelier does not convey. In her marketing materials on the bar, where they had the stuff spread out, there was a little tinted thing like that says, chandelier in dining room does not convey. As you walk into the house, there's one of those little candy holder things like this. It had a tinted sign on it that said, chandelier in dining room does not convey. Do you get my drift? What does the contract say about chandeliers? The contract calls a chandelier, it actually says light fixtures, but it says that it's a fixture. Who normally makes the first offer, buyer or seller? Who normally makes the first offer? The buyer usually makes the first offer, right? When the buyer made the offer, they had no compelling reason to leave the chandelier out, okay, to exclude the chandelier, right? Apparently in the negotiation, because oftentimes what happens is you get an offer, and then you enter into verbal negotiations, and then you just memorialize everything on the contract. It's not uncommon. Somehow it was completely overlooked. So the chandelier was not addressed as an exclusion on the contract. So when they go under contract, what is the status of the chandelier in regards to the contract? It's staying. It's going with the house. Is there any way in the world that the sellers are going to leave that chandelier? There is no way in the world that they're going to leave that chandelier. So what happened in this case, you're talking about the luckiest agent ever. She got out of it, she had made a mistake. Now granted, you could say the sellers did as well, but the reason they hire professionals is to make sure that they don't make mistakes, okay? So she got lucky because she was able to replace that chandelier. It cost her about $800. It could have been dramatically worse. You know, it could have been a few $1,000s if she had to go up and find a just so antique chandelier. But the one she was able to find that satisfied the buyer and having it installed cost her $800 to get out of this dilemma. It's an expensive lesson to learn, okay? Try not to make a mistake. Be cognizant of this. Don't let transactions start moving so fast that they get out of your hand. Address these. And my agent started out doing the right thing. At the listing presentation, she started to address it. Trust me when I tell you that the fixtures provision in the listing agreement is the same paragraph that you see in the contract. So there's supposed to be some continuity between here and there. Fixtures, go with the house. They started out as personal property, but by the time I tell you it's a fixture, they are now defined as a real property, and they stay with the property. Questions or comments about fixtures? Any thoughts on those? Oh, well, you will have. You will have questions about fixtures. Let me just play a game with you real quickly as long as I have you right here. Let's pretend that this room right here is the living room in my home. A living room in my home. Why don't you look at that TV right there? That TV a fixture or not? I need you to raise your hand in this case. Okay, Alyssa, did you want to play?
Sure.
Okay, is that TV right there a fixture or not?
No.
No. Okay. Anybody think it is? Okay, Ann wants to play. Ann, would you like to describe why you think it is?
I think it's wired in the walls. That's why.
Oh, interesting. The wiring does, in fact, do that one run through the walls to get to it. Do you change your mind now, Alyssa?
No.
Okay. Why else do you think it's a fixture?
That's the only reason.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sam.
Mounting bracket.
The mounting bracket. How do you respond to that, Alyssa? She says, well, the mounting bracket is put there in such ways to indicate permanence.
No.
Alyssa still says, no. Daniel, what say you?
Well, you had the contract, with the contract with the dude with, and he said it was permanent.
What's permanent? The bracket?
Yes.
They attach it literally to studs because it's holding something heavy. Alyssa says, well, okay, the bracket, I'll give you that. The bracket is, in fact, a fixture. So now let me ask you this question. What was the sole purpose that the bracket was put there? To hold the TV. So let's go back to the total circumstances test, and let me remind you, method of attachment and adaptation, why was it put there? Okay. Does that mean it's a fixture? Alyssa, does that mean it's a fixture? It still doesn't mean it's a fixture, but at this point, have we introduced ambiguity? Yeah, we've introduced ambiguity. Now that TV right there today costs a few $100. At the time we bought that TV, it cost well over $1,000. Here's my comment to most agents. Do you feel strongly enough about your opinion as to whether it's a fixture or not that you're willing to risk $1,000? Okay? And when it comes down to it and we get to things like this, I want to talk to both sides. Listing agent. Is the seller planning on leaving that TV? Buyer's agent. Does your buyer want it? Okay? Let's have those conversations, because if we have those conversations, we can actually enter it into the contract, and then it's not ambiguous. And then Lauren, who is leaving us now, she mentioned one a little bit. By the way, I'll just the electric fence. Yeah, the electric fence. It's interesting. I used that one as an example since she brought it up a little bit earlier. Our contract seems to be moving to this contract, this concept of all related equipment. So, for example, the dog fence. The electric dog fence is now defined as a fixture, but it says the dog fence and all related equipment. So, think about this invisible fencing system. I don't think any of you would argue that the point buried in the ground that sets the perimeter, I think we would all agree that that's a fixture, right? Okay. How do you control that fence, the charge and stuff? There's a unit inside the garage typically where you can control it. It controls the intensity of the fence, whether it's off, whether it's on, etc., etc. It's actually attached to the wall in the garage, a couple of bolts to hold it up. It's a little bit heavy. Is that a fixture? Yeah? I think that's a fixture. But you know what they tell you when they sell you those things? Oh, you can take this with you when you go. It's be easy enough to take with you when you go. That's what the salesperson told you when you bought it. Okay? Let me tell you what else is a fixture. Okay? That unit talks to the collar. So is the collar, according to our contract, electric, invisible fencing systems, and all related equipment, is that collar. According to the contract, that is. How about the dog? No. Apparently you can take the dog and go with you. But this whole concept scares me of all related equipment. Pools and spas and all related equipment. Surround sound and all related equipment. Okay? Be careful out there. On any given house, 1, 2, or 3. I mean, it's not like you're getting 18 on any particular house. Finish talking about fixtures. Y'all want to be finished talking about fixtures? Okay.
If there's just like a mirror or a dresser, it's like, looks like it goes with the dresser, but it's a fixed wall, it's a mirror, that's part of it.
Wall and or door mirrors, you know, how do you define those? I think you just have to be careful if they have substantial value. Obviously, when it was mounted on the back of the dresser, there was no issue. The issue came in when they attached it to the wall. Great question, great question. Okay, I'm actually not through talking about fixtures. I want to tell you what a fixtures paragraph would look like on the test and see if you understand how to deal with this. Your fixtures question on the test is probably going to be about half a page long. Because look at all the moving parts that we want you to take a look at. We want you to have read, not memorized, the fixtures provision in the contract. Will you do that for me? Just familiarize yourself with that. Then what we will do is we will say, well, maybe the chandelier in the dining room, however, it was excluded by agreement between the buyer and the seller. Well, if it's excluded, if you look closely at the fixtures provision, there's a line under there where it talks about exclusions. So if you want to take the chandelier with you, you write chandelier in dining room is excluded from fixtures. Well, if you do that, it's really no longer a fixture because the seller gets to take it with them. Would you agree with that? Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay? And then what we're going to do is we're going to throw something sentimental at you. How about that little mailbox that your grandson made you in kindergarten? Okay? You took that little mailbox, you attached it to the house. It's as cute as it can be. It's sentimental to you, but it's attached to the house. Is it a fixture or not? It's a mailbox and it's attached. It's looking like a fixture. I know it's sentimental. Sentimental doesn't matter. Money doesn't matter. What matters is how it's attached. How about that Japanese maple tree planted in your front yard? Fixture? Yeah, it stays with the property. How about that ficus tree and a terracotta planter on the front steps? Not attached to the property, right? So you see all the moving parts we can throw in there, and then in the end we're asking you which one of these would be fixtures, which would convey, and which ones would not. You will do extraordinarily well in this on the exam though. Let me show a couple of things to you as we are getting out of fixtures. Look at that kitchen right there. I don't know how well you can see it from where you're sitting, but I'll just go around the kitchen. The refrigerator right there, is that a fixture? No. How about that dishwasher?
Yes.
Anybody have any idea what? What word did I use earlier? Built in. Built in. It's a built-in appliance. Okay. Stove. The stove is interesting. The stoves used to fall under the category of if they were built in, they were fixtures. If they were not built in, they were not. If you look closely enough at your fixtures provision, you will notice now that the first words on there, I think it says stove, range, oven, bless you, are in fact considered fixtures. Now, in other words, the attorneys had so many complaints about this, they just went ahead and said, I tell you what, if it's a stove, it's considered a fixture. All right, so we can remove that one from controversy. And then, of course, the microwave. You see where that microwave is? Clearly, that is a built-in as well, right? How about this? Do you see the medicine cabinet that's up there on the wall? What do you think, fixture or not? Yeah, I think probably so. I think it should be permanent enough that it would be considered a fixture. How about the blinds? You see the slats running, the vertical slats? Fixture?
Yes.
How about the valance?
No.
Yeah, that's a tricky one right here. I think probably no, but I could be persuaded otherwise if I thought it was customly made for that particular set of lines right there. I could go either way on that argument. I'd have a conversation just to be sure. Okay? You might not be able to tell dimensionally on this, but you see down there where that TV is setting? The TV is off the wall. It clearly is not a fixture. I'm not arguing that. I don't know about these shelves it's sitting on. What do you think? Are these fixtures or not?
So it could be a built-in chart.
It's hard for us to tell in this picture whether they are actually built in. I mean, realistically, if they're built in, the tile only goes up to them and then stops. And if that's the case, clearly they're a fixture. Someone pointed out to me that you can buy stuff like that at like Pier 1 or something and just put them there. And if that's the case, then clearly they are not a fixture. How about the one that's up on the brick wall, those shelves? I think they're built in. Yeah, I think they're built that way. Can you see the blinds over there on the windows?
Yeah.
Okay. How about the curtains? I don't think so. I don't see anything special about those curtains. If you can't see what it's pointing to, there's a mailbox attached right there by the front. That was the example I gave you just a moment ago. Somebody asked me a question about the. I didn't do it. I thought there used to be a swing there. Apparently, sellers take with it. I hope it wasn't a fixture. Okay. You feel all right about those?
Yes.
Okay. Stop. We just keep going. We just keep going. How are we doing on time? Good. Go all day. Okay. Let's drop intensity just a little bit from fixtures. Fixtures clearly hard, clearly testable, but these things are closely associated with fixtures, but not the same level of intensity. When I talk about trade fixtures, as the name might indicate, trade fixtures are those fixtures that are necessary for the conduct of your business. Okay, trade fixtures. And the interesting thing about trade fixtures, you can go ahead and just cut to the important point if you want to. Trade fixtures, you can take them with you when you leave. Tenant, when you move out. If it's a trade fixture, it was necessary for the conduct of your business, you can take it with you when you go. Let's make a couple of assumptions right now that will make this go much easier. When we talk about trade fixtures, I'm going to assume you as the tenant, when you left, you had paid the landlord what you were supposed to pay. In other words, you're not behind in rent. Okay? And also, if you damaged the property when you removed it, then you repaired the property. Both of these assumptions are fine for our purposes. Trade fixture, you can take it with you when you go. My advice to you would be probably to use the book, but come up with a short list of what you think are trade fixtures and maybe just kind of visualize those. For example, if I had a pizza restaurant, okay, I leased a hole in the wall, I put in ovens, I put in a bar, I put in chairs and things like that, right? So trade fixtures. Is my oven a trade fixture?
Yeah.
Likely it is. Likely it's attached to the floor and to the wall for safety purposes, if for no other reason, right? But when I leave, I put it there. I can take it with me. When I go, I'm going to fix the hole in the floor, okay? How about my bar? My bar, it's kind of attached to the wall as well, attached to the floor, safety purposes. We have people up there dancing on the bars. We don't want the bars to fall over, right? Trade fixture. Take it with you when you go. How about the chairs? How about just the little metal chairs and middle tables? Well, actually, that's just personal property when you think about it. They're not attached to anything, are they? They're just personal property, okay? How about when I had a retail store? When I had a retail store, it was literally, at one point, it was just what we call a plain vanilla shell. This property had nothing in there. But when at the time the sporting goods store was created, there had to be walls put in because we're going to have part of the store that would be storage, part of it would be for one purpose, part of it dressing rooms, for example, bathroom, had a little bathroom in there as well. So you look at all the stuff that was trade fixtures versus what belongs to the shopping center. The exterior walls, what we call the demised walls, the leased walls, they belong to the shopping center. They're just part of the building. Okay? But then those interior walls, slat wall, you ever seen that when you go into a retail store? All that was put there for the purposes of displays. Trade fixtures, take them with you when you go. How about our cash register and our display cases? We have those attached because we don't want kids bumping into them, knocking them over, spilling our money, cutting themselves on the glass. So they were in fact, trade fixtures. Think about gosh, I don't know. Like I say, look at your book and get some examples of these. But it's a level 1 topic, not quite the intensity of the regular fixtures paragraph. But having said that, be familiar with it. And the key difference is, when we're talking about fixtures in your home, they stay. The trade fixtures, why? Because I'm probably just leasing the space. Therefore, when my lease runs out, I take my trade fixtures with me and I can go. Feel all right about that? And then finally, when it comes to agriculture fixtures, don't stay up late at night studying agricultural law in North Carolina. If you don't mind, keep this very, very simple. Agricultural fixtures, the important point is going to be agricultural fixtures stay at the end of the tenancy or when you sell the property. When I think about agricultural fixtures, I just think about something large. Think about a barn. Think about a silo. All right? When you leave, are you going to be able to throw that silo in the back of your truck and take it with you? Not likely. So agricultural fixtures, if you think of something large, this becomes somewhat obvious to you. Now again, the reason I say don't stay up late at night on this, farming has changed a lot over the years. For example, tobacco barns used to actually be stick-built barns, and obviously they stayed when the property was conveyed. But today a lot of barning is done by bolt barns. And what you can do is you can put those on the back of a flatbed truck and take them with you. So what I'm telling you is, here's what I want you to remember for the exam. Agricultural fixtures, they stay on the property unless there is a contractual agreement to the contrary. You're in the field and you're selling agricultural properties, seek legal advice if you get into a situation like this. Is that fair enough? Fair enough. Let's move on. We got a few pictures. Little feeding trough. All right. We're kind of through with fixtures, but closely related to fixtures, and then I'll ask you to stop it and just stay on one, please. Matter of fact, we're probably running out of time here shortly. Closely related to fixtures, but slightly different, we're now getting ready to talk about the effect of the Uniform Commercial Code, UCC. Throughout this class, you will often hear me use acronyms, UCC, FHA, FNA, you'll hear all kinds of stuff. Some are more important than others. UCC, most people recognize by itself. It actually stands for Uniform Commercial Code, but this is an acronym that we would use on the exam and expect you to understand what it means, okay? UCC, Uniform Commercial Code. Let me tell you what I don't want you to remember. The Uniform Commercial Code is an extensive set of uniform laws that deal with business transactions. Okay? That's exciting. But this is a real estate class. So all I care about is the UCC's effect on real property. That's it. That's all I care about. What does that say? Oh well, let's write down now what that says. The UCC's effect on real property. That's all I care about. Now, the association I want you to have in regards to UCC is this. The UCC has an effect on financed fixtures. The UCC has an effect on financed fixtures. Well, you now know what I mean by fixtures because we talked about it extensively. Finance, of course, means you owe someone money. Financed fixtures. My longer way of saying this, if you choose to write it down, which you don't need to, I mean, these notes are perfectly good. An item that appears to be a fixture remains personal property until the financier is paid off. That's the UCC's effect on real property. An item that appears to be a fixture remains personal property. Why? Because it's been financed and it's considered the personal property of the financier until it's paid off. Okay? UCC's effect on financed fixtures. Let me tell you a long story. For no apparent reason, actually. But if you remember the story, you probably don't have to stay up late studying the UCC file. So here's the deal. I own a property, and it's December. It's the late December, like December 20th, and I'm sitting in my living room, and I notice that inside I'm starting to get cold, which is strange because I have the thermostat on. Everything should be working appropriately, but I'm getting cold, so I go check the thermostat. I see that it's not holding heat. So I walk down to where my furnace is, I look at it, That didn't fix it. I turn it on then off, or off then on. That didn't fix it. So then I kick it, because that's the extent of my mechanical acumen. And once I do those three things, if it didn't start back, I'm going to just have to call somebody. So I pick up the phone, and I call ABC HVAC Company. And I say, you guys, I need y'all to get out here and look at it. Okay? So they come the next morning. They take a look at it, and they say, we have some bad news for you, Mr. Barnett, and we have some good news for you. I said, all right, let me have it. What's the bad news? He said, your furnace is not working. I'm like, I know that. That's why I called you. He said, no, you don't understand. Your furnace is never working again. That is bad news. That is really bad news. Does anybody remember what the date of the year was? December 20th? It was December 20th, and I have a little 8-year-old daughter. On December 20th, I have no money. I have spent it on Christmas presents, okay? So now I have to get a furnace replaced. What could possibly be the good news? Well, here's the good news, Mr. Barnett. We'll be glad to install that furnace for you this afternoon, and if you would just sign a couple of documents, you won't have to make your first payments until March of next year, and then it will just be simple installments for the next 5 years. Okay, that is good news. You know, it's always simple installments. Have you ever had anybody say, it'll be hard as hell for you to pay this, but you sign it anyway? They never say that, do they? Should. So anyway, they put the furnace in that afternoon, that night, nice and toasty, and I don't have to worry about it. We have a beautiful Christmas. I don't have to worry about payments till March. So January comes around, I'm warm. February comes around, I'm warm. March comes around, I'm warm. I have to make my first payment, which bothers me a little bit, but it keeps me warm. So I'm okay with that. April comes around, and April, if you haven't lived in North Carolina long enough, in April you don't need the heat anymore. And if I don't need the heat, I ain't writing a check for a heater if I don't need it. I'll worry about that again next year, okay? So I quit writing checks to the finance company, all right? Well then, around June, I'm thinking about, I'm just sitting there in my living room, and my buddy Jared comes by and has a beer with me, and we're sitting around talking. He said, Chris, I've always liked your neighborhood. I was thinking about buying a house here. Jared, I got some good news for you. I'm thinking about selling my house. Listen closely to what I tell Jared. Jared, here's what we're going to do. There are real estate agents involved. You're a buddy of mine. We don't even need an attorney. I can just go down to Office Max and I can get a copy of a deed, and I can make the deed from me to you. We cut out the attorneys. We cut out the real estate agents. You can save yourself a lot of money, and you can own this house in a week. Jared said, that sounds fantastic. Okay, so we do that. And we close. He goes to get some finance. We close. Everything is okay. All right. He now owns the property on July 1st. Just flash forward about 6 months. It's December again. And Jared's sitting there in his easy chair. It's getting very, very close to Christmas. And out on the front yard, he hears such a clatter. Actually, it's not a clatter at all. What he hears on the front porch is this. Beep, beep, beep. Do you know what that sound is, Jared? You ever heard a truck when it backs into your yard? Beep, beep, beep. He goes out, he looks in the front yard, there's a big truck there, and it says ABC HVAC on the side of it. What is that truck there for? To take back their HVAC. They don't have a lien on the house. They don't have any recourse. If he's not going to pay, they have no recourse but to come and take the furnace away. It's what we refer to as a chattel mortgage. Actually, write that down. That sounds good. Write that down. Chattel, C-H-A-T-T-E-L. If you ever see the word chattel, can you tell me